Good day, and welcome to Toronto Transfers Weekly Wraps. I'm Viv Govender, and as usual, what we'll do is look at general market, overview, and then focus in on a tech segment at the end. Okay, in the general market, piece this week, we're going to look at two things. Firstly, Woolworths results and what does it mean for the retail sector in South Africa, and then we're just going to look at interest rates. Lots of big news this week: the Fed, the BOE, etc. Then we're going to move on to AI/tech segment, looking at Microsoft's numbers as well as what's happening in the AI space at the moment. So, in our Woolworths, Woolworths, the numbers came out this week. Weren't great, but the market wasn't expecting greatness, as can be seen by the share price, and so the reaction wasn't too bad. But what does it indicate about what's happening in the retail sector at the moment? Well, retail in South Africa is obviously a very old sector. But any kind of sector, or any kind of industry, even the way we live, is very dependent on technology. As technology changes, the environment that we operate in changes as well. And the development of these delivery services are very important, and they are going to change the retail environment going forward. In Woolworths results, we've got some ideas about their delivery service. We also have an idea of what's happening with Shoprite's delivery service and how dominant that particular service is at the moment. So, the way I like to think of it is this way: imagine a world without cars. There's no cars in the world. Okay, so then when we get to the car, we all either walk or use horses. In that scenario, you can't live 20 k's outside the city and work in the city. That means if you had to live, say, 20 k's outside, say, Sandton, and work in Sandton, without a car, without motorized transport, you walk here. It's going to take you half the day to get here, half the day to go home. It's basically a marathon. That's not feasible. If you basically had a horse, whatever, it's obviously getting your horse ready in the morning, running to work, running back. Even then, it's not going to be very fast. So, feasibly, if you want to work in Sandton, you've got to live, reasonably close to Sandton, and that means that, of course, property valuations close to Sandton are, going to be much higher than even a short distance away. However, you have a car. A car gives you the ability to travel 20 k's in, a straight line, probably in 10 minutes, quite frankly, if you can get 120 k's an hour. But with traffic, with all the other things, it's still going to be well less than an hour. And without traffic, probably half an hour would be a reasonable estimate as to how long it'll take you to travel 20 k's. Half an hour is not a long time to travel. An hour of your day out of commuting, to live in a better place, to have more space, etc. Feasible. So the car, that technology changed how we work. It also changed property valuations. It changed all these other things. Now, a new technology has developed, which is these delivery services. They're developed with conjunction with, obviously, apps and mobile phones and that kind of stuff. And what does it mean? It means that basically the way retail is done has changed. Same thing happened in the past when it came to retail. In the past with retail, without people being basically able to travel by car, etc., they would go to the mom and pop shops down the street because that's where you'd walk to. If you go to places like London and so on, you do find out these smaller shops around still. Why? Because it's walking distance from where you live. You go to the US, much more car-driven places, and then you don't have these mom and pop shops anymore. You have Walmart. You have these huge complexes. Why? Just drive to the big complex, drop the stuff in your car, drive home. One shop a week. It's not so much difficulty. The same thing's happening right now with delivery services. These delivery services are coming into play, and they're going to change retail as much as the car changed retail back in the day. How? Well, imagine you have the following scenario. You want to buy, say, some Weet-Bix or a Coke or something. You don't really care how far away what expensive things are, because generally the pricing across the different shops are the same. You're going to have maybe a sale here and there that's going to make Coke one run cheaper or make Weet-Bix a couple runs cheaper. But generally, that's not enough to justify traveling another 2 or 3 kilometers to get to that place. The petrol use waste or the cost of actually traveling, etc., is not worth it. But if, however, you were able to basically sit at home and have somebody deliver it to you, then a 1 or 2 run difference makes a difference. If you want to buy a Coke, you buy a Weet-Bix, you're sitting at home, and you just say, okay, I want this delivered. Well, some guy comes in say 10 minutes, some guy comes in, say, 15 minutes. The guy that comes in 15 minutes gives you the stuff 2 or 3 rounds cheaper. Honestly, I mean, is 5 minutes worth that kind of saving to you if you're just sitting at home and doing whatever you do normally? No. If you have to travel, yes. But sitting at home, no. What does that mean? It means that the advantage a shop has from being nearer to you kind of diminishes significantly. That means that the retail environment you see right now, where there's these multiple shops very close to each other. Just the other day I was traveling home, I realized there were so many Woolworths quite close to where I was at that moment. Nothing was more than a 10-minute car drive away, and there were 3 or 4 of them that were like a 10-minute car drive away from where I was right now. In that environment, you wouldn't have 3 or 4 Woolworths. You wouldn't have, sort of multiple shops just a few, kilometers away from each other. You'd rather have these distribution centers that are, larger, maybe in less attractive areas. Most of these grocery shops at the moment have to be in a complex, like a shopping complex, a shopping mall kind of situation. Why? Because you want to basically have to do other things at the same time. You won't find, for instance, like a Checkers sitting in the middle of nowhere, kind of like you do at a Macro or something. Generally, Checkers or a Pick and Pay is going to be in part of a little shopping complex, even if it's the largest shop. You have delivery services, that's not the case. You can find the cheapest land. If it's a couple of k's or further away, doesn't really matter, because your guy on a bike is going to get there 2-3 minutes later than he normally would. That is not enough to make a decision about where you buy your stuff from. 2 or 3 minutes, it's not really a factor. Even I would say 10-20 minutes probably wouldn't be a factor in terms of having it delivered to you. Maybe if it's a couple hours, it might be a bit of a difference, but 10-20 minutes probably isn't. 10-20 minutes, like we talked about before, by vehicle is not a lot of. It's not it covers quite a lot of area. You add another 10 minutes to your travel time, and you're on a motorbike. You can be several kilometers away from where you normally are. So imagine that scenario, where what we're going to have in the future, as delivery services get more and more powerful, is you're going to have more and more consolidation of the retail sector. You're going to have bigger stores, but probably stores in areas that are not as accessible and not as attractive as they used to be in the past, like these shopping malls and whatnot. And then basically you're also going to have probably a consolidation in terms of just the number of players out there. The good thing for Woolworths, however, that I have to mention as well, is that they are a bit differentiated. There's stuff at Woolworths you can get that you can't get at like a Spar or a Pick and Pay or Checkers or something like that. That being said, Spar and Pick and Pay really don't have an advantage over Checkers, and Checkers right now seems to be by far the dominant player in this space, able to execute at a much higher level than its competitors, and I think that's going to be a real thing to see play out over the next few years. Just as if you go further to the point of another fact, if you look at Pick and Pay share price, it's fallen about 2/3 over the last 5 years. In that same time, basically, ShopRite's share price has gone up about 90%, 90, just indicating just how much it's been rewarded. And this has been before. Like I said, we are going to be seeing the full impact of delivery services coming to play, and I only expect the advantage ShopRite has to increase. I think this is really going to, this new technology is really going to benefit the biggest player in the market. It doesn't really make sense to have multiple little shops around everywhere if you can get something cheaper from a bigger distribution center, and then in that scenario the biggest guy wins. Okay, moving on to interest rates. The Fed this week did nothing but talked, and the talk was very, very powerful. They basically are going to cut rates in September, barring some massive surprise with inflation. I think that the kind of thing people are saying is the Fed is not data point dependent, it's data dependent. That means they look at the trend of data, so no individual data point, unless it's extremely difficult, an outlier, is going to be enough to actually, change their view. It's now towards start of August. September's next month. We probably are not going to get enough of a surprise in any of these numbers to change their expectations of a cut in September. So we'll get a cut in September. Some argue that the expectations of a cut in September are so high at the moment that it's almost not worth the effort of waiting to cut. The Fed always has to balance whether or not they're doing it too early or too late. Right now, by basically announcing as they have, they currently almost priced that thing into the market. They should rather just cut. That's what some people argue. But we don't want to really have central bankers surprising us unless they have to. And in this scenario, the market wasn't expecting a cut this time, and so it kind of makes sense for them to just strongly indicate September is going to be the next cut. The BOE, Bank of England, has also cut interest rates as we speak. I think we are starting a massive interest rate cutting cycle at the moment. Probably going to take at least a few years to fully work its way through. And understand, we talked about this before, that there's what's called a lag in how you operate monetary policy. So if you cut interest rates right now, the full impact of it won't be felt this month or next month, even later this year. It'll probably be felt by the middle of next year and maybe even later. Some people say it's between 9, some people say as much as 9 months to 2 years. That's how long people normally talk about the lag in interest rates. So we're cutting interest rates now, we're going to have that impact on the economy for maybe 2025, 2026. And like I said, we're going to be cutting for the next couple of years at least, just to reverse some of these hikes they put into play. Now, I don't know if they'll return to the inflation cycle kind of levels. Probably not, but they probably will be significantly lower than where they are right now, and that's not going to happen in one fell swoop. They will cut 0.25 likely multiple times. What does that do for the market? There's only two things, as you guys should know by now, that really affect stock markets over the long term. One is interest rates, the other one is tax policy. Interest rates are going to be falling over the next little while. Tax policy, who knows? Right now, I think the Democrat versus Republican, contestation for the next election is a lot closer than it was, say, 2 weeks ago. But we are still in the kind of the sugar high of the Kamala Harris, announcement, and I think with 90 more days to go, that might not last all the way through. And even at this current point, Trump still probably has like a 60-40 advantage in winning the election, though I think he's probably the underdog when it comes to winning the popular vote, whereas with Biden, he was actually winning the popular vote as well. So, why is that important? Harris is probably going to be more, in favor of higher taxes, more regulation. Trump will be in favor of lower taxes, lower regulation. So that might be the other effect that comes into play. And there might be a confounding factor. If Harris wins, it's going to probably work against the interest rate cuts. If Trump wins, it might just be a tailwind, might be supporting whatever effect of interest rate cuts. But the important factor to remember is this, that if we're going to be going through a couple of years of cutting interest rates, unless we have some major surprises on the hand, that generally indicates there's probably going to be a few good years for the stock market. Okay. Now, moving on to our AI/tech segment. Microsoft results came out as expected. I mean, there's no way you should not have been expecting this. The current levels of AI out there are not at the level that they are really economically impactful. Certainly not on the level that these guys are spending money on. Okay, we also had numbers from Alphabet as well. These are not, numbers that are indicating that they are making a huge amount of money from AI. Why? Well, like I indicated like many times before, what's happening right now is that we've had the prototype stage. We've had every Tom, Dick, and Harry building his own, AI system. It's like when everyone was building a phone, before it basically became stabilized to the phone companies you have right now, which is Apple, Samsung, Huawei, and a couple other smaller guys. But in the past, there used to be like a Sony phone, there was a Microsoft phone, there was a Facebook phone. I think it was Facebook actually did the phone. I think there was discussion with the Facebook phone. There was the Amazon Fire and all those kind of things, and everyone was trying this thing out. But over time, the industry got too big. It became too difficult to actually compete unless you were a specialist in the area, and you really want to be competing in like the space where these guys like the Apples and the Samsungs are. It's a lot of money to basically compete there. I think that we are entering that kind of period right now where we exiting the point in which like a little startup can go out and make an LLM, and as we get into the probably down the line, say 2-3 years time, it's going to be probably Microsoft with whatever it has, if it's OpenAI, its own internal systems, will probably be Alphabet, probably Meta. I'll expect Amazon to come out with something. If the LLMs are proving to be important, I think Apple will also start spending money. The other player that could do well here is Elon Musk's xAI. The only reason that I would put him up there because he doesn't have the money. He's fighting the world's richest man. This is the kind of money that's beyond even the expenses of the world's richest man. It's because he's proven historically to be abnormally good, let me say, at executing things like this. He's done rockets and beat Boeing, and he's done cars and beat Toyota and beat Volkswagen. These are not unestablished companies, and there's certainly no way you could say that, for instance, an Apple or Amazon, especially in the current setup, is comparable or not comparable, but is an out of the league of a company like Toyota. They're both kind of the same kind of level of competence, and if you could beat basically Toyota from nothing with Tesla, he could easily beat Microsoft and Amazon, etc. from a from being a position behind with XAI. So that is the other one. But I don't think you're going to be seeing like a Mistral being around. I don't think you'll be seeing the Falcon AI system, coming into play and being strong. You probably will see something in China. I don't know exactly how that's going to be, created and how we'll be owning it and stuff, but probably under the auspices of like an Alibaba or a Tencent or something like that there. And you might have a couple of these things out there as well. But the thing to note as well is that we would expect the capacities of these systems to be significantly better going forward. Right now, what these things can do are nice. They're good little tricks. They effectively give you a smart high schooler in terms of ability. And smart high schoolers are nice, but they are not something you could run a company with. They're not something that you could basically, have huge impact on the economy with. It can help with some, low-level presentations. They can help with, graphic design. Again, very good graphic design, but not at the absolute peak level. You're not going to get the new Star Wars from, an AI system just yet. You're not going to get the new Harry Potter from an AI system just yet. You can get a little blurb, copyright blurb, but for advertising something from an AI system, you can get a few pictures and even some video. And the video, by the way, has done really well. If you're looking at the best video currently available out there, you look at something called Kling from China, Kling. Excellent. Sora from OpenAI. We don't know what's happening with that. It's not out there yet. But Kling from China, it's really, really good. But these are just like little kind of party tricks almost. They don't really have an impact on the economy. In fact, there was actually an announcement that Microsoft has lost some of the big AI deals because they're not really seeing that benefit coming through just yet. We need to be seeing the benefit come through, and that needs to happen in the next couple of years. We are getting, like I mentioned before, the new levels of systems coming out in the next, say, 3 to 6 months. I would expect by the end of the year to have at least the following: the next version of OpenAI's it's called GPT, probably called GPT-5. I expect to see the next level of Llama. Possibly, looking at history, Musk is promising this by December. They'll probably make it the first quarter or the first half of next year. That's his usual timeline. In terms of how long it takes, it's much longer than he talks about. 6 months is probably going to be closer to a year. But we're going to get these new systems coming out, I would say, in the next, say, 6 months. So at that point in time, we'll have a very clear indicator of what's happening. If, and it's a big if these systems show the improvement that previous iterations have shown, game over. You just go all in. It's going to be an AI world, because if the jump between 3 and 4 is reflected in the jump between 4 and 5, 5 is going to have economic impacts. Okay, there's just no question about it. If 5 is as big a difference between as 3 was to 4, definitely going to have world-changing impacts, and even if it doesn't improve from there much, or plateaus thereafter, that jump is enough. If the jump is significant but not as big as, say, 3 to 4, then we still could have doubts, because we'll probably need another one more level after that, 6 or 7, to get to the level where it's going to have a big economic impact. That's number one. Number 2 is robotics. Robotics really have to come through. We just had full self-driving 12.5 come out. According to the guys that review these kind of things, it gives you twice as much drive time before you have to do an intervention. You still have to do an intervention. You can't fall asleep in your car, because you might then sleep permanently. This thing does misbehave very badly sometimes. But you are talking about a significant improvement in terms of ability, and much of the improvement we've seen coming through from this has happened in the last few months. Why? Because they're now using AI. As someone said recently, self-driving, robotics, it's an AI problem. AI developing in other ways is going to help these things. And because these things have not worked for all this time in the past, now it's probably going to work. It's like, for instance, flying was probably a motorized internal combustion engine problem. Once you got the internal combustion engine, flying became a relatively easy thing to do. Once you have AI, robotics, and self-driving is going to be easy to do. Before you had AI, self-driving was not going to work. The models they used were just not going to get you to where you needed to be. Okay, that's it for this week. Thanks for joining me. I look forward to speaking to you guys again next week. Cheers.